ready.
Cynthia? Thank you. The special meeting of the Annapolis City Council will be called to order on Tuesday, June 20th, 2023 at 7 p.m. This time, would you join us for the invocation given by Alderman Rhonda Pendell, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We can bow our heads and close our eyes. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you once again for bringing us to this sacred place, this place where decisions are made that affect the lives of our residents, businesses, visitors, and all of those that surround us. Lord, give us the wisdom, the guidance, the direction, the wherewithal to continue on what we know is the proper journey. Lord, we're coming at the end of this budget season, and let us be refreshed and renewed as we go into the next fiscal year. We thank you in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Yes, that's my wholesome all-American look. Madam City Clerk, please call the roll.
Mayor Buckley?
Here.
Alderwoman Tierney? Here. Alderwoman O'Neill? Present. Alderwoman Pendell-Charles?
Present.
Alderwoman Finlayson?
Present.
Alderman Chandler-Meyer?
Present.
Alderman Gay?
Present.
Alderman Savage?
Present.
Alderman Arnett?
Mr. City Attorney, please present the first item on the agenda.
The first item on the agenda is approval of the agenda.
So moved.
Thank you. Could I get a second? Madam City Clerk, please call the roll.
Yes, sir. Mayor Buckley?
Aye.
Alderwoman Finlayson?
Aye.
Alderman Chandler-Meyer?
Aye.
Alderman Gay? Alderman Savage?
Aye.
Alderwoman Tierney?
Aye.
Alderwoman O'Neill? Aye. Alderman Pendell-Charles?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. City Attorney, please present the next item on the agenda.
The next item on the agenda is a public safety briefing by Police Chief Edward Jackson.
Perfect timing, Chief Jackson. Please come forward.
Always on the case, I'll tell you.
Hardest working man in Annapolis.
Okay, good evening. Before I get started, I'd like to, for the record, to identify who's with me. To my left is Captain Lamar Howard. And Captain Howard is my operations commander. Particularly, I asked him to be here tonight in case I need him to contribute to the discussion. And secondly, to my right is another important part of our public safety deployment, and that's Captain Justin Klein, as he's the chief of patrol. So Captain Howard manages the detectives, and as one of the architects of the deployment plan, and then Captain Klein is the commander of all of the uniformed forces. He also participates in part of the action plan. And so I'll just kind of give an overview of the events, and then I'll get more specific with some of the things I can talk about. Other things I will mention, but I can't get into in particular motives and all those kind of stuff. I had a conversation with the state's attorney today, and she kindly asked that I be very judicious in terms of what I can talk about, because some of these cases are charged and the person hasn't had their due process in court. So I don't know who's watching this, but I'll say what I can say in an open session, and I'll kind of give you an overview of what we're doing about crime here in the city of Annapolis and how we are going to respond to it in the future. And I'll start off by giving an overview. Of course, everybody in the room is known of the most tragic events that's occurred in the last 8 days. We had, in particular, in the 1000 block of Paddington Place on Sunday, June 11th of this year, at about 8:00 p.m., my officers responded to the 1000 block of Paddington Place off of Ben's Drive in Edgewood for a report of a shooting. When they arrived, all of us responded and saw one of the most horrific scenes that I've seen in a long time. We had 3 individuals dead from gunshot wounds. They were on the front lawn, had all been killed by gunfire. We had 3 other individuals who were struck by gunfire, but have since been released. They were sent to area hospitals in stable condition and have since been released. Of course, we have a person who was arrested in that case, a gentleman by the name of Charles Smith. He's a white male, and he was born in 1979, so it makes him about 44 years of age. Served his country and was living with his parents. I think it was at 1006 Paddington, 1004. Yeah, 1004 Paddington, he was living with his parents. We do know that some type of disagreement came up. I can't discuss in great detail because that just hasn't come out. This is still an ongoing and fluid investigation. Although he's been arrested and he was charged with 3 counts of second-degree murder. He was charged with 3 counts of second-degree attempted murder. He was charged with the use of handgun in commission of a crime. And of course, he's being held at Jennifer Road Detention Center pre-trial without bail. So that was the most horrific event that's happened in the city of Annapolis in a long time. And what makes it interesting is it comes on the heels of the 5th anniversary of the Capitol Gazette shooting, in which 5 journalists, lost their lives. And so it couldn't have come at a worse time. We were preparing to pay tribute to those 5 journalists. And then we've had, which is classified under federal guidelines as a mass shooting, which the Paddington is definitely classified as a mass shooting. It garnered attention all over the country. Just about every major news outlet reported on the events that night. We don't know. We honestly don't know whether it was a hate crime. That hasn't been determined yet. It wouldn't be for us to determine. I want to make that point and emphasize that point. If it is a federal hate crime, the federal government has to determine that, not the APD, not the Anne Arundel County State's Attorney, not special interests. The FBI and the United States Department of Justice have federal guidelines which clearly defines what a hate crime is. So that's not our jurisdiction. As I said in the media press release that night, if it is determined, and it wouldn't be by me or Ann Colt-Litis, if it is determined to be a federal hate crime, then the federal government, they exercise jurisdiction, and it'll be charged by them, and then they would have to field any questions or concerns about, why it was charged federally, but I haven't heard anything, nor has it, I don't think it's come near, nobody's discussing that right now. So that wasn't a public safety threat in the sense that that was something that we could have prepared for. There's no deployment plan that anybody could have come up with to prevent that particular incident. And I'll get into a little bit of that later. So I just wanted to start off by highlighting that. What I'm not going to say is the standard stuff, because I don't, I'm talking to elected officials, but America is dangerous right now. I don't want to say Annapolis is a safe city compared to other cities, because it's a quality of life subject. In other words, if people don't feel safe, then in their minds, they're not safe. So I'm not coming before the body to defend the fact that Annapolis is a safe city. My personal opinion might be that, but I'm looking at it from a different lens. I'm comparing it to other jurisdictions. But what I do recognize is that if citizens don't feel safe, then it's my job to do my very best to make them feel safe. But I think it requires also more than just the police. And I'll get into that in a few minutes as well. It goes far beyond the perception of safety versus the reality of safety, statistically or qualitatively, numerically or qualitatively. We talk about crime numbers. There's things that I think we have a role in playing, but it's not all of our responsibility. We have a community outreach program that I take seriously that tries to address things like jobs and mental illness and alcohol abuse and all those social things that would make crime the end result. We try to address those things in the Annapolis Police Department, so I will address that later on. But I want to get back to, there's two ways. When you talk about deployment, and I don't know how much it's been talked about, and it's something I wish I was driving down here, and I wish I would have talked about that a long time ago. It's only two responses to crime, and the two responses of proactivity and reactivity. Proactivity and reactivity. Proactivity are those things that we can do to give residents the assurance that we're out there, that we're visible, and that we're ready and able to respond should something happen. And then the reactivity part of it is when something when something happens, how we respond to it. I think we're doing both. And as I sat here and looked at the numbers in preparation for what I was about to say last night, I think we've reacted to it as best as that we can. I think that we reacted to it as good as or better than most police departments in the United States. All of the crimes that have occurred, the spikes in shooting on the reaction part, most of them are either incarcerated or they have charges pending. We have no cold cases that's occurred in Annapolis this year. As horrible as those incidents are, and as tragic as they are, and I do feel it. I feel the stress of it because I want to lead a department that makes citizens feel as safe as humanly possible. I want everybody to be able to wake up in the morning and have the expectation that they're going to come home and that their family members and their loved ones are going to come home unharmed. That's my charge. That's what I raised my right hand. That's what everybody in this room confirmed me to do when I first came here 4 years ago, is to make the Annapolis Police Department not only a public safety organization, but I see myself as the police chief, more than just the police chief that presides over the department. I see myself as a civic leader. I think a good police chief is a civic leader. And a civic leader has to have the ability to really talk openly and honest about everything that goes on, what drives crime, criminologically, economically, politically, and socially. And I think all of those things factor in the influx of crime that we're seeing. My honest opinion is that, particularly with young people, juvenile crime, juveniles, the structure of our legislature, our legislative response is empowered juveniles. I think that there needs to be better consequences, more stringent consequences for youth who pull triggers, who commit carjackings, who do a whole lot of other things. But not unique to Annapolis. It's everywhere. It's not a jurisdiction in the United States right now that's not struggling with young people committing crimes. And I say young people, I'm talking about people who are defined by law under the age of 18 in Maryland, who have committed crimes that would be real serious felonies had they been adults. But that's something that's, I don't have control over. The criminal justice system has three important components. The police are the first. Then you have courts and corrections. That's the system. It's not just the police. So what we do is to investigate crimes and make recommendations to the state's attorney's office, or seek charges ourselves, and then that process has to be prosecuted in the court of law. And then if the person's found guilty, then they're confined by a judge to a correctional facility for either an indeterminate or a determinate period of time. And so what's not often said a lot of times is that, because we're the first line and we operate 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, we're the face of public safety, but there are agencies that go beyond the Annapolis Police Department. The courts close. It's the truth. Courts close. Parole and probation, they close at 5 o'clock. And a lot of criminal justice agencies, they close and they open up the next morning. Annapolis Police Department, like most police departments, operate 365 days, 7 days a week, and we never close. And so we become the face. My frustration is at times is that there's things that we need to do more collaboratively as a system. And I don't have the answer to that before you tonight, but I just wanted to put that out there too. And I'm gonna try to say a lot of things real quickly because I know that you have some questions. One of the most important things I think we're doing, these spate of shootings, separate from the massacre on June 11th, we recognize that in order for us to get a grip on this crime, we had to follow the intelligence. We had to compile good intelligence, and we've used everything, I think, to the fullest capacity. The National Ballistics Integration System, NABINS is the acronym. We've used that to be able to trace guns in the city of Annapolis, how they were used. We're able to trace information through CCTV cameras with our federal partners. And I said that today too. One of the things that, as a sidebar, I asked these federal partners to come out into the community because I come before this body quite often and talk about our federal partners. They do have faces and names, so I want you to meet some of the people who I have relationships with at the federal government who have been of great assistance to me and the Annapolis Police Department in helping us to combat this crime. So we're planning that now so that everybody on the council can put a name with a face. So I don't have to always say our federal partners. I don't want you to think it's some shadow group of people that are nameless and faceless, but they've been very instrumental in helping us put together organizational charts now. So now we have them before us. When I come before you, I can look at an organizational chart. A lot of this is confidential, but we talk about how these shootings are connected. And the purpose of that is not only identifying people and bring them in, before the courts to account for their criminal activity, but we know how they connect to the various wards, particularly the three most problematic wards, and that's your ward, Alderwoman Finlayson, and your ward, Alderwoman Pendell Charles, and particularly Dewan's ward, the sixth ward. But the second, third, and sixth are pretty much, and of course, who would know that Paddington would pop up? So it should send a lesson to me, or sent a strong message to me that any ward can erupt. Like many American cities, we look at communities where there's high concentrations of poverty, and all that goes along with it, drug distribution, fentanyl, poverty, hopelessness, underserved neighborhoods, public housing. We look at those and that becomes the face of crime. But we're living in a time now where, particularly in Annapolis, it's only 7.1 square miles. violence can erupt anywhere in all 8 wards, and we have to be forever vigilant. So I'll get into that a little bit. But getting back to the structure, what we're doing now is I'm having Christine O'Neill, along with the guidance from Captain Lamar Howard and my detectives, to put together something that we can look at. So I can look up and we can have a discussion with my commanders about what drives this crime, who are the key players, who's responsible for what, how do they connect with other people for the purpose of dismantling them. That's where the federal partners come in. We've identified people who are under investigation now, and we hope to bring in soon under federal indictment right here in the city of Annapolis to dismantle some of these groups who are trafficking guns and bringing drugs in and responsible for some of this violence that extends way beyond the boundaries of the city of Annapolis. Most of it is north in Anne Arundel County, headed towards Baltimore. Glen Burnie, Brooklyn, Severna Park, DC, and then further south to DC. There's a nexus between all of those jurisdictions. And so what we're trying to do now, I met with the superintendent of the state police, had lunch with the superintendent of the Maryland State Police and the chief, Amal Howard from Anne Arundel County. This was Friday. And I met with the new Sheriff Seska, and we met with Supervisory Agent Autumn Brown from the FBI. And we had a nice working lunch on Friday to talk about how we can strategically approach some of this stuff to deal with some of this violence. I think more regionalism needs to occur. We need to develop more task force because we don't control who comes into Annapolis. It's not like the Mexican or Canadian border that we have to show a passport if you want to cross Rove Boulevard or come down Bestgate or anywhere else within the city limits. People come here for a whole lot of reasons. One of the problems I've identified in Annapolis is a rendezvous point for drug trafficking. We have a couple of incidents that's happened recently where we found large quantities of illicit drugs, and we know all the evidence suggested they were only a drop-off point here. And so we have to do something about that. And of course, we can talk about tonight some of the improvements. Of course, the issue is always the body-worn cameras, closed circuit, the street cameras, closed circuit TV, CCTV throughout the city of Annapolis, which is being worked on. That can always be improved, but we're still solving crime that way. I'll get into a little bit of what drives the violence. What drives the violence is that everybody knows each other here, and a lot of the violence is retaliatory. Every time we have a shooting in Annapolis, I worry, because I expect to get a call from either Captain Kleindes or Captain Howard to say that another shooting has occurred, and then through our intelligence, most of it's retaliatory. One shooting in one part of the city can cause retaliation, and they're patient a lot of times. They may not shoot you the next day, but they catch you when you're vulnerable. And when they thought that either you forgot about it or didn't know about it, and they catch you when you're vulnerable. And then when the smoke finally clears, that's a metaphor for when we finally get to the bottom of what happened, it's retaliatory. That's the very, very few incidents of random violence in the city of Annapolis. There are people who know each other. That's why we are now doing organizational charts and try to target people where we can to disrupt it, to let them know that we know that you're a part of a network and that we're watching you. And the minute you step out of line and violate the law, we're coming after you, and to not only save lives, but to save your life too, if we can get you off the street. So I'll go case by case, what we've done since January, and we're ending now in the last week of June. So this is the first 6 months of the year. Our first homicide, of course, was Ramon, if I'm pronouncing his name right, Rico Johnson, and he was a 23-year-old male, and he was shot and killed in front of 1101 Newtown Drive. I'm sorry, shot in front of 712 Newtown Drive in his community on the 22nd of January of this year at about 6:55 p.m. And they basically, my officers responded there for a shooting, and once they arrived, they found Mr. Johnson suffering from at least one gunshot wound, and the officers found a handgun on the victim, and he was later pronounced deceased. That case is still pending. We do have a person of interest. It hasn't been charged yet, but we know that the person is not currently walking the streets of Annapolis. Our second homicide occurred on the 2nd of March, and that happened about 5:15 p.m. And officers responded to the 100 block of Oberry Court for shots fired. And of course, I was there that day. In fact, we were amongst the first officers there. But myself and Captain Howard and Captain Klein, the three of us were there that day to give direct supervision to that crime scene. And that occurred on the 2nd of March at 5:15 p.m. And when we arrived there, we found a victim who was later identified as Mr. Raphael Johnson. And he was a male, African-American male, 48 years old. And he suffered from a single gunshot wound to the back of his head. Well, we later arrested a woman, a 32-year-old woman by the name of Renisha Harris. She fled the city of Annapolis, and we caught her in Tampa, Florida. The U.S. Marshals caught her in Tampa, Florida. We know she had connections to Baltimore. She had connections to Anne Arundel County, and had connections really several places: Baltimore City, Baltimore County, Anne Arundel County. But we actually apprehended her. The U.S. Marshal Service apprehended her in Tampa, Florida, and she's since been extradited back to the city of Annapolis and charged with first-degree murder. And again, without getting into the case, she's been charged, but she hasn't been tried yet, so I don't want to get too deep into the case, especially public, but we know that that wasn't randomized. Homicide number 3. On June the 3rd at 11:23 p.m., Annapolis Police officers responded to 1120 Madison Street regarding the shooting. And when officers arrived, they located an African-American female. Her name is Amari Tidings, and she's 26 years old. She was suffering from multiple gunshot wounds to her head and body. And Ms. Tidings was located in the driver's seat of her vehicle when found by officers. She was subsequently pronounced deceased a few moments later at 10:18 p.m. We got a lot of evidence almost immediately, was able to process that evidence, and it led to an arrest of an individual who's been taken into custody. He was also taken in custody by one of our federal partners, the United States Marshals, and he was in the Glen Burnie area when the United States Marshals took him into custody. So that case is solved. And again, this just happened, so I can't get into the meat of that because we don't want to put stuff out there that's going to make the prosecutor's job more difficult. That's case number 3. Okay, of course, we know 4, 5, and 6, right? That's the mass shooting. That's all the 1004 Paddington Place, the mass shooting that occurred on the 11th of this month, last week, at 8 o'clock. Just as a sidebar, I was sitting down, getting ready to eat a good meal when that call came out, and needless to say, my good meal ended up being a microwave meal. I eventually ate it a day and a half later. But we got down here, and it makes me sad to really talk about it. The mayor was there that night, and we talked to residents. We went back the next day, and we continue to go back to follow up with the community to try to bring some sort of healing for the community. But on June 11th at 8:23 p.m., on June 11th, 2023, I'm sorry, at 8 p.m., my officers responded to Paddington Place for a shooting. We found 6 people, victims of a gunshot wound, 3 of which were pronounced deceased on the scene. And of course, I talked about that earlier, 3 were transported to hospitals, and they all were in stable condition. Suspect was arrested immediately and taken into custody. And with consultation of the state's attorney, he was charged with the counts that I spoke about earlier, 3 counts of second-degree murder, 3 counts of attempted second-degree murder, 6 counts of first-degree assault, I believe, and then 1 count of use of a firearm in commission of a crime. So he's in custody, waiting trial. Again, there's a lot of speculation about what happened. I have to stay away from that. I've been asked to stay away from that in the interest of justice, just in the interest of justice, because that investigation is still ongoing. We ask our federal partners to process the scene so we can get the evidence back in real time, because we don't process our own evidence. We depend on PG County and sometimes the Maryland State Police. But they were gracious enough to process our evidence so they can get it back to us in real time. We don't have to wait months, because of the significance of the case and the widespread publicity that we're going to get as a result of it. I want to be able to inform the council and the community, the citizens of Annapolis, that apprehension took place very quickly and that we're moving forward with the prosecution of this case. And so, again, the suspect was later identified as Charles Robert Smith. He's a male, white, 44 years of age. Well, really 43 years of age. He'll be 44 this year. And I'm staying away from a motive. The 3 victims were Latino and the shooter was white. So a lot of people were automatically looking at it as a hate crime, but we just don't know. And I'll stay away from that, because I don't want anything to jeopardize the case. Come up with anything I say or anybody else say at this point is just speculation. They don't know. So that case has been charged. And of course, that accounts for the 3 murders. So 4, 5, and 6, I'm sorry, are all a result of that. But I'll give you the victims' names.
I think we get that, Chief. I think we've got that on the victims' names. I think we went through that. I did want you to speak to all the deployments that you've been doing over the last several months, because I think you've had a lot of people on the ground that's why you've been so successful, I think, in catching people. So.
Yes, sir. And I just got one more, Mr. Mayor, if you permit, and then I will get to that, as I know time is of the essence. But the last homicide is Nelson Polson, and he was a person of interest, and that's the event that occurred the incident that occurred in the 1300 block of Tyler Avenue a few days ago, about 5 days ago. He was shot in the head. I since learned this afternoon, that he passed away from his injuries. He had been stabilized and was expected to survive, but he suddenly took a turn for the worse and expired this afternoon. So, early yesterday evening. So that case is ongoing, and we expect that case should be charged eventually, hopefully. So now, we've done a lot of things. First of all, we have let me talk about this, the number of guns that we've seized. We seized 14 weapons since January. Since May. Since May, we've received recovered 14 illegal weapons we got off the street. I'm referring to the first case. I'm sorry, I'm trying to hurry up now, but the ghost guns that occurred in February?
No, so that happened in April.
In April? Okay. You want to talk about that a little bit?
Sure. So initially, we were called in once before for a closed session.
My voice is loud, so I think I can get away with it. But we were initially in before for a closed session where we had an investigation regarding a robbery and a non-contact shooting. We were able to track the suspects by going back to the location and taking a look at the video surveillance where we were able to identify the suspects as well as the vehicle that was used in that particular incident. We followed the video surveillance footage back to Tyler Avenue where we were able to identify a location. We secured that location and we obtained a search and seizure warrant. Upon execution of that search and seizure warrant, we identified that location to be a ghost gun factory, if you will permit me to say that. We recovered 7 lower receivers, 6 handguns, a machine pistol, and the makings of a potential rifle, as well as a 3D printer from Tyler Avenue. So that was one of the investigations that we had at the time during that deployment. We were attempting to be mobile, but due to that not being sustainable, because of the fatigue that it was bringing on the men and women of the Annapolis Police Department, we had to go stationary where we are right now, in the 2 locations where we are right now. And to the chief's point, the smart policing data, we followed the dots where we were likely to be struck with potential retaliatory violence, and that's where we are currently today with our 2 deployments that we have now, which are both in the Harbor House community as well as the Newtown community.
And the name of the deployment? The name of the deployment is Operation Save Our Streets, and I'll give you some particulars. It's headed by Captain Howard, so he's sitting right here. He's the operations commander, supported by Captain Kleindes and patrol forces. And so basically what we're doing is, because of the series of contact shootings and non-contact shootings, we wanted to get out in front of it and present a presence in the most problematic areas. Of course, we had a couple of unexpected shifts in the last week, and the one I just finished talking about. But just the background of it, because of the Annapolis Police Department has experienced and had to respond to a series of contact and non-contact shootings, as well as the homicide, we decided to come up with a deployment plan. In discussions with Captain Howard, in my office, we decided to come up with a deployment plan to address the shootings, and we pretty much ran it from June the 1st, and we're going to run it through around July 8th, and then we'll evaluate it. After July 8th, we'll look at how the overall effectiveness of it. And then we'll tweak it and we'll regroup. But the deployment, as I'm about to describe, is it's going to run until July 8th. And basically, in the Harbor House community, officers and deputies from the Anne Arundel County Sheriff's Office are pairing up to remain highly visible with their overhead flashes activated and will be on post only. And then officers and the deputy sheriffs will be periodically walk foot throughout the aforementioned communities that's in both Harbor House and Robinwood, Eastport Terrace, in an attempt to serve open arrest warrants. We have been successful in serving warrants issued by the district and circuit courts of Baltimore, Anne Arundel County. So we were out there not just being visible, but we're taking some of these warrants that's been sitting around and we're bringing people into court who the judge or court commissioner mainly, has charged them with a crime. Not only that, but K9 will routinely scan both communities using K9s to locate and identify individuals illegally carrying firearms. We do have a K9 supervisor who's very skilled and a very veteran K9 handler. and a couple of his officers that are skilled at using the dogs to look for people who may be harboring drugs, illicit drugs and guns. Also, one of the things that we talked about, which I preach all the time as a former inspector general, is not enough to have a patrol plan, but what we're doing now, we have APD patrol permanent rank supervisors. The supervisors have to be involved in this. I don't want them sitting in the station just signing officers' documents, reports, and overtime slips. I want a permanent rank supervisor out there to inspect this deployment every hour and make adjustments as needed. In other words, I want my supervisors to be out there, and if they see a need to redeploy because of something, a potential threat, then I want them to do exactly that and just advise command members. And then our drug enforcement unit and our other units will be responsible for surveillance, monitoring, and identifying targets. And so I don't want to get into a specific minutia because I don't want too much information to get out there so the bad guys can adjust. But in the Newtown community, where we've experienced a lot of problems, we've had a few shootings, the same thing, officers and deputies, we have an agreement with Sheriff Sesker that will remain highly visible with overhead flashes activated and will be on post only. Officers and deputies will periodically walk foot and they'll do the same thing, basically the same thing. And then we have private security, Chief Lemon, who I talk to just about every day, working in Newtown, Woodside Gardens mainly, but you know, that runs into Wilborn Estates, the old Newtown 20, and Woodside Gardens to make sure that his officers are out there and so that they can serve as a force multiplier. And he's generally pretty good. Anything he sees suspicious or he thinks is a potential threat, he generally calls me, and then we send somebody out there to look at it for the interest of, for the purpose, of preventing something that's happened. And then, and these resources, of course, some of it involves overtime, Mr. Mayor. Some of it involves resources, and we're trying to do both. And so, basically, the long and short of it is that we'll be highly visible, everybody in the Annapolis Police Department, including me. I also ride the city. Just about every night before I go home, I'll take a ride through the entire city. It doesn't take that long, so I'm not sitting here being self-grandizing. It doesn't take that long to ride it, but if I see something I don't like, as the chief of police, I'm making the adjustments myself. I'll call these two young men and say, I want to see more people on Forest Drive, or I noticed that I haven't seen anybody on Madison Street. Where are they? And so we're really using the resources available to us to the best of our ability. You know, my challenges are many. Like most police chiefs, my challenge is recruitment. You know, that's always a challenge to become fully staffed. You know, we have to offer incentives to want to bring the best and the brightest. You know, we're competing with, to be honest, we're competing with agencies who offer bigger bonuses. What's attractive about Annapolis is that crime is manageable. It's a wonderful city, got full of nice people. And so it's a pleasant work environment, but officers with young families are motivated first and foremost by money because it's a dangerous job, and Annapolis can be just as dangerous as everybody else. So all that helps. The city itself, the charm of the city helps, but at the end of the day, we're competing with people who can pay the most and offer the most, and that still remains a challenge for us. Of course, one of the things I would love to come before the council, and I hope I'm chief long enough that I can, because I want the biggest, people ask me what do I want my legacy to be. I'm real clear, I don't think twice. I've been very consistent. I want my legacy to be that that I expanded the size of the Annapolis Police Department to really address the needs of the community, a strong community policing-based department that does two things, that holds violent offenders accountable, but also offers a strong outreach, and you need people to do that. I want it to be both. I want Annapolis citizens to remember me as a police executive who understood the plight of the poor and was sympathetic for people who are addicted to drugs and had mental illness, but also a chief that was going to hold them accountable under the law, because everybody has a right to live. And our biggest civil rights issue, in my opinion, is the fact that we have too many guns and too many people available to use it, and not enough community involvement in terms of making a strong stance against that. And we're going to try to rally the people around. My vision is for the future is to get a robust, and I've been asking for this since I've been here, a robust citizens on patrol. Find some kind of way to get the community really engaged and take responsibility, not become police. We'll continue to take the risk and put our bodies in harm's way, but we still need people to find a way in our more challenged communities to get more people involved, you know, and that's a very complex proposition. I subscribe to James Q. Wilson's broken windows theory. When neighborhoods are hopeless, it becomes more attractive for drug dealers to come in. It becomes more attractive to set up drug organizations because the people are hopeless. And then it provides jobs where other entities don't, i.e. being a drug dealer, young guys hustling, making money that they can't make legitimately. So we have to turn that dynamic around. That's a part of crime prevention. So I want my legacy to be that we have a strong unit in the department to address that, while at the same time giving citizens a sense of safety and security, and know that we're going to protect them and use every tool at our disposal so that everybody, regardless of what neighborhood you live in, what race, what ethnicity, which economic, social-economic system is, that your chief did his very best to provide safety and security for the community. So,
Chief,
did I leave out anything?
Yes, so we allowed like over 30 minutes for this. I think some of the council want to ask questions now. Alderman Pendle,
I'm done, yes.
Alderman Pendle Charles had requested this briefing from you, so we appreciate that. The police chief will be available to all of the council for some one-on-one if you need some more in-depth questions. So if we could just not make this a huge thing. So I would ask, I think the first person to have their hand up was Alderman Schneidermeyer, then Alderman Pendle Charles. Well, you can, like the chief said, things that we say in this public realm sometimes can be used, so you can ask questions, but if something is more sensitive, I would ask that the city council gets a one-on-one with the chief for that. Okay, I'm sorry. Alderman Schneidermeyer.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I had a lot of questions, but I'll try and get that meeting with the chief for some of those more specific ones. But one of the things that I want to do one bit of praise and then just one question that I think we're lagging behind and a lot of people are wanting to know. One, we do have very good detectives here. We have caught a lot of suspects in these homicides. The recent hit and run in Eastport, our detectives caught a suspect in that. That needs to be praised. That is amazing investigations. One thing that a lot of our constituents are getting worried about, though, is what is being done on the preventative side, the proactive, not the reactive. And one of the things I want to point to is we are getting a lot of reports of shots fired, even if they are, I believe you called it non-contact, no one hit with a bullet. That is still incredibly dangerous. I don't know if that's someone attempting a homicide and missing. I don't know if that's some Yahoo just shooting their gun in the air for fun. But what is the investigative process to catch those people? And what is, I apologize, one little quick follow there. And what is the process for trying to stop that from happening?
Well, we do our very best. Like I was saying at the end of at the beginning of my presentation, we have intelligence-based policing. Alderman Schneidermeyer, what we can't do anymore, and this has nothing to do with the police. People don't want stop and frisk anymore. They don't want us jumping out of cars and grabbing people. The only way you get guns is to take them. And so, policing has changed in America. We have to face that reality. I said that when early on, the legislature has pretty much tied our hands in many regards. They wanted to take over responsibility. We have laws in place now, and enacted by the Maryland General Assembly says you have to limit certain things. So the only way we can do that to respond to that. See, people say they want better policing as a result of the George Floyd revolution and all that went along with that. But what it did was it helped create some of the things that we are experiencing now. So we go out there every day, and I tell my officers to engage in constitutional-based policing. You can't have it both ways. You can't go out there and slam people up against the walls and go through their pockets like policing has traditionally been done in targeted areas. We can't even target people along race anymore. So what we do is we come to work every day and try to follow the intelligence. We doing better ballistics. We're doing better. Better follow-up investigations. We have detectives out there. We have uniformed officers out there. But right now, we just have a handgun problem in America, and people very, very ready to use them. And again, we can't stop everybody and do checkpoints. So guns make their way in here, and unless we have really good, reasonable, articulable suspicion, that I have to be prepared to come before the council and explain why we did certain things. I mean, in the old days, we just made those kind of problems go away, but policing has changed. And so we're out there, and I would defend that. I'm so proud of the men and women of the Annapolis Police Department, both uniform and sworn. I have to praise the officers. I'm very sorry and dismayed every time we have a discharge, but it's everywhere. There's no, and I say this respectfully, there's no magic wand. It's tough, but we're doing everything that we know how to do within the boundaries of the law to make sure that we enforce the law fairly and accurate. And the flip side of that, we're making better cases. People are going to jail for longer periods of time than in the past because this new mandate in policing all over has forced us to do better investigations and collect better evidence, and my officers are articulating their probable cause better than I've ever seen before. But the problem is that we have to find a way, and I'm not going to sit here and tap dance around that and try to make excuses. It's tough, sir. It's really tough. And again, we have to find a way to, I want to do citizens on patrol. I want to do block watch programs, robust block watch programs, and I really want to expand the size of the Annapolis Police Department so I have discretionary forces out there, well-trained to address those community things. We haven't realized that yet because I still say we're too small.
So I won't do another follow-up question, just a quick statement after that, if you don't mind, Mr. Mayor. I understand there's new rules, regulations in policing. A lot of it our city police weren't guilty of, but other local jurisdictions did a lot of constitutional violating. Baltimore police was monstrous. You look at the gun trace task force, yes, they got guns off the street, but they also basically formed an organized crime ring. And it's something I want to follow up with you on because I do feel like we can come up with an in-between of what the gun trace task force did and only being able to stop people if we have a direct warrant. And I understand maybe you can't get into that right now due to timing or due to not wanting to give out our information. I would like a private meeting with you on that front.
Oh, I'll gladly do it. I know time is of the essence. I actually love to talk about it. I really do. And I say I enjoy it. And I would love to talk about it in more depth. There's a lot of things I wanted to say tonight, but I noticed we don't have the time to say it. But I just want you to know and your colleagues to understand we're making better cases. And what's special about the Annapolis Police Department, I think that sets us apart, we're the talk of the state. We are reacting very well, but a good department also has to have the ability to prevent. But, you know, Who's responsible for the gun? The person that makes the poor choice to point it at somebody and pull it. That's who ultimately is responsible for it. So then it becomes the question, it begs the question, how do we respond to that? And who should make sure that these people are off the streets? Because at the end of the day, my frustration is that sometimes if you're not careful, the narrative is framed. Everybody's guilty but the guy who made the decision to pull the gun illegally. And everybody else gets blamed for it, and including the police and prosecutors and elected officials. But at the end of the day, that adult who makes the decision to kill somebody should be held accountable. And that's the real person responsible. We have to change that. It's a social problem. But I'd love to talk to you privately. Now I can share more.
Thank you, Alderman Pendell Charles, and then Alderman O'Neill.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Chief, you touched on something that my colleagues have been asking a lot about, and that's our fiscal year 24 budget and how that's juxtaposed between recruitment and retention, and what did that budget consist of when it came to recruitment and retention?
Yes, and my original request was to get a grant writer and a grant manager so we can compete with some of the bigger federal grants to fund positions, so we don't always have to come to the council. That was out of a conversation or remarks that Alderman Gay had made about a year ago when he asked us at a previous council meeting, hearing about, he asked the question, why didn't we apply for grants to offset some of this? And I thought it was a good idea. My response to Alderman Gay at the time was we didn't have the bandwidth to support or manage multi-million-dollar grants, but I would love to come before the council with the finance committee's oversight to be able to come and fund positions, of course with the council's oversight, and fund positions to expand the size of the Annapolis Police Department and get better equipment, more vehicles, more outreach. I didn't get that this year, but I'm hoping that at some time we have a real serious discussion, because of course we're looking now and we're locking in probably at the University of Maryland, but we're still waiting back from 2 other agencies to hear from, and I'm trying to get it done gratis if I can. The IACP, the International Association of Chiefs of Police, to do a work analysis so that we can get a real snapshot from the experts what the size of the Annapolis Police Department should be and take it from there. If it says we should have another 20, 30 positions, then I was laying the foundation for the burden not to be on the taxpayers. I'm not an elected official, but I know that you pay for police departments and enhancements by raising taxes. I was trying to come to the council not only with a problem, but a solution to my own problem, and that's high grant funders. But we have to have the bandwidth. We have to pay, we had grant writers, but they were competing for small grants, and we have to have an industry standard level grant writer, professional grant writer, and that's a 6-figure salary. And that's not counting fringe, whose sole responsibility would be, they would be measured by their ability to get grants, but that's not enough. Once we get that grant, we have to have somebody with the skill set to manage those grants, to make sure that the money, when we report to the finance committee, that there's no fuzzy math and that we can account for every dime that we spend, whether we're talking about funding more detectives or getting better cars or whatever we can do, even paying for bonuses, because there's grant money that you can pay for bonuses. We have a small grant that does that. So when Anne Arundel County announces that they give it a $15,000 signing bonus to hire people, then we can do the same thing. You know, this is a great place to work. This is a great city. But at the end of the day, you know, Alderwoman Pendell Charles, is that most of my officers are young. Most of my officers weren't even born yet when I graduated from the academy, weren't even born yet. And so they have up and coming families. They got mortgages and they have young kids, and they're trying to prepare for their future, so they go where the money is.
Chief, we don't have, or do we have a recruitment division within our police department to assist with that? My understanding is a lot of the funding that was given to you for fiscal year 24 is for retention, was for retention versus recruitment. Correct me if I'm wrong.
No, ma'am, you're absolutely correct. We have Detective Murphy, who primarily does recruiting. I like to see a separate background investigator from the recruiter. He does everything. Like a lot of my police officers, he has multiple jobs. He's even called upon to work on the street on a real bad day, our recruiter. And so I hope he's recruiting when he's out there on the deployment plan. But what I like to see him be able to do, first of all, I like to have a recruitment day. What we used to have in Baltimore was a recruitment day when we take 5 or 6 different detectives and send them all over the city. Or we go to Puerto Rico and places like that, you know, and recruit people from, you know, all over the United States. We go to military bases. I know in the old days, we would fly recruiters to Germany. Yeah, that's how they got Captain Howard. They go to Germany into military installations and recruit. When you hear your enlistment is up, would you be interested in becoming a police officer? You'd be surprised. I don't have the ability to do any of that. You know, we go to Anne Arundel County and a couple other places. Most of our recruitment is lateral, and then we have to find an academy for the ones that we do. We try to get as many lateral transfer because it's cheaper. We can train them ourselves as opposed to somebody has to get certified by the commission from ground one. Then we have to find an academy for them to go to. So to answer your question, Madam Chair, is that that's one of my visions too, in the expansion of the Annapolis Police Department, have a more robust, more efficient way of recruiting.
And grants would help.
Absolutely. Yes, ma'am. Because we have a grant now. If he was here tonight, he's not here, but Dave Miguez, he had a grant. I remember signing off on it, and it was to pay for, I don't know if you can speak to that, Jody, but it's to pay for bonuses. We have a grant that can pay, and they're small bonuses. But I want to compete for the bigger bonuses, you know. Like when I read in the newspaper, the Capital or the Baltimore Sun, that Anne Arundel County's giving out $20,000. We have to compete with that. Now, we got the nice raise a year ago, that put us on par with the other agencies, but what we don't have is the bonus money, and that would help. And then it would help us to sell the department on college graduates. I entered into an agreement with the Police Executive Research Forum, and they want to send, they paying for it through the U.S. Department of Education, I think it is, but they're targeting historically black colleges and universities, young men and women who have graduated from historically black colleges and universities, to get them to come into policing. Because there's a need to recruit, especially in American cities that are inhabited by, that most of their residents or the demographics are mostly African American and Latino officers. They're trying to get college educated police from historically, like myself, from historically black colleges and universities to come into policing. So if you go online, I think it's a press release about that, the Police Executive Research Forum. They contacted me. I'm a graduate from, along with Captain Howard. Amy Miguez is there now. I'm a graduate from it. It's a Boston University-based program to train you as senior management. I graduated 20 years ago, and I know Captain Howard graduated, and Amy Miguez is there now. She graduates in a couple of weeks, and they're taking the charge to try to get more minorities to come into police service, because there's been research done. And whether we're talking Morgan State University or Coppin does pretty good, but a lot of, because they have a criminal justice program, so they do pretty good in recruiting police go into, Coppin State graduates go into policing because they have a criminal justice program. But many college-educated African Americans don't see it as a viable career. They think they see it as high risk, low reward, and we have to turn that dynamic around. So I'm working on that as a part of my recruitment strategy. And it's getting people from making it a diverse department to get men and women from all walks of life, more women in leadership programs. That's why I want Amy to be highly visible. One of her charges is to go out there, and I asked her to make sure that during her day that she talks to young women about careers in policing, and let them know that not only once they get here, it's not a glass ceiling. They can rise up to the highest ranks and become chiefs themselves. So that's what I'm trying
Chief,
to do now.
this is the most diverse police force we've ever had, right?
Oh, yes, sir. And that's, yes, Mr. Mayor, it is the most diverse force that the city's ever had. And that's a fact.
And I'm just going to step in here because this was supposed to be a briefing. So we're budgeted for full police coverage, right? We probably need to have a work session rather than, and this is 45 minutes into a briefing. So the briefings not so brief anymore. And there are people waiting for other things. But if you would like to have a quick question, Alderman O'Neill, Alderman Savage, and then if we could make it brief, we'll move on.
Thank you very much. Mine will be quick. I, like Alderman Schettelmeyer, are worried about the non-contact because those seem to be increasing as well. And it's almost as if we're brushing over them if there's not. It feels that way. But I also wanted to talk about the cameras. You said a couple times about the CCTV cameras, and are they all working at the moment? Are we monitoring them? And
The short
need
answer
more?
is we are monitoring him. I just hired a monitor to work day work. He's going to start July 7th. He's a retired detective, and he worked in internal affairs. He'll be on board the 7th. Alderwoman, let me
O'Neill.
say, I'm sorry. I didn't want to say Karma. I was want to call you by your title, but I stumbled. But anyway, to make a long story short, we didn't have a chance to talk about that. We clear a high percentage of our discharges. We're not sloughing them over. The challenge is not catching the people that do it. We use CCTV, and we have, if you look at the organization chart, we have to invite you to OEM. We do a high percentage. We're catching a lot of people discharging. The challenge is not catching them. The challenge is how do you prevent them? That's the key. That's a better question, really. It's not once they make the poor choice to shoot, there's a high probability that they're going to get caught and we're going to arrest them. But the challenge is how do you prevent it? But we're not sloughing over them because it's my philosophy, and they'll tell you, not because they work directly under my command, but the way our philosophy in the Annapolis Police Department that a discharge is only a missed opportunity to kill somebody. We realize the intention, and I tell the community that every time I'm out there, it's just a missed opportunity to do harm. So we take those very seriously. And you'd be shocked at the number of people and the number of guns. I've said since January, but we had 14 guns. That's quite a bit. That's a lot for a big city. We got 14 guns since May. So we're going after, and most of those guns are not from homicides, they're from discharges, and we're following them. We get tag numbers, we get cars, we find out where they come from, but my challenge is, to be honest with you, is how do we prevent them? That I can't articulate in depth about that. That's what we're working on.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. And last question, Alderman Savage.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I guess, yeah, I'll try to be quick as well, and just because there's some things I think I'd like to get to in whatever the part 2 of this might look like. Because what we hear from residents is that a lot of concern, but they also, as far as gun violence in general, and their first reaction is often, well, you make sure you're funding the police, getting more police officers. And the concern about gun violence is certainly coming from all across the political spectrum, left, right, middle, everywhere. Everybody seems to have a concern about it. Now the one thing I think that'd be helpful is to really get an understanding, a breakdown, and I'm going to look towards, I think, police, but also the city manager office to figure out what the best route to do this. Maybe we need another task force just for Annapolis as far as gun violence prevention. But it seems to me there are a lot of different causes to it, right? We've got the one in my ward seems to be more or less some kind of mental illness or potentially racially motivated, but regardless, it seems like someone is mentally ill to have to be able to do what he did, right? More policing isn't going to prevent that. I think the police did an admirable job. You guys got there, couldn't have asked for you to get there any quicker, unless you could somehow predict this and get there ahead of time. But so I'm not quite sure how more policing would help with that. I think there must be some other answer to that. And that's where I'm looking at, some of the things that was mentioned in the papers, that these two neighbors actually had some legal issues with each other, making charges against each other. There was conflict, is my point. And I was in the system, and this predates you, predates, I think, a lot of us as far as when we were on the council. I think that was back in 2013. But it tells me, for that type of gun violence, maybe we need something in place that helps to intervene as far as conflict resolution. So there's that, but there's also, we've heard we oftentimes just have too many guns on the street, right? And sometimes the crime is driven by people coming from out of town, presumed for the drug trade and whatever else. Some of it's retaliatory, like you said. Some of it has socioeconomic origins. So there's all kinds of different crime and all kinds of different sources as far as the gun violence, but people are jumping right to more police. And I think more policing would help with a lot of these things. But as far as us, when we're trying to craft policy, I want to try to figure out what's the best policy for this type of gun violence, this type of violent crime, right? And that's what I feel like I could really be helpful as far as where I'm coming from, is getting a list of some of the gunfire events, even if it's non-contact, and even if we have to do this in closed session, that's fine, but a list of the gunfire events, what the potential causes and sources are, so we know, could we go down the sources to figure out what we can do about it? And same thing with all the homicides. And again, I understand some of this is confidential, so maybe we need to do this in closed session, but I'd like to go through that list of homicides from this year, even years past, and figure out, well, what were the causes? How much of this were retaliatory? Because it seems like some of the answers are often, could be more police officers, could be more cameras, could be more social workers. Maybe we want to give more money towards conflict resolution, mental health. Maybe we want to pay for more recreational programs, because it seems like those would all work for different types of crime. And so, I'd like to have a larger conversation somehow so we can make the right policy decisions and the right funding decisions, right? So I don't know how much that's a question for today, but that's kind of what's going on in my head with everything that's going on.
Well, I know the time is of the essence, but when we were talking about the Kansas City study today, and when you get a chance to read the Kansas City study, you're right, Alderman Savage, there's no direct correlation between more police and crime reduction. What the study found is that the officers have to have a purpose. In the real world, ideally, you would want 8 crime plans, 1 for each ward, because the demographics are different. And we have our head in the sand if we think all 8 wards are the same. No, there's different dynamics. I mean, everybody in this room knows that the most challenging ward is Alderman Gaze. He has the highest concentration of poverty, all those things that would cause that. But then other wards, like Alderwoman Finlayson and Alderwoman Pendell Charles, a lot of that spews over into their wards as well. Some at Alderwoman Carmen O'Neill's ward too. You talk about Clay Street and some of that stuff. So make a long story short, ideally I want more officers because I want more outreach. And I would love to sit down to the council and we discuss how you want your ward to look. And then we have officers deployed there. I go out on the street every night with a limited number of officers. I don't want to say how many, because I don't want people to know what we have or what we don't have for security purposes, but we go out with a limited number. Every ward should be represented every night, and I'll just leave it at that.
And I think we can bring these things to a work session, so I think that's a very good idea. Alderman Savage, thank you. Sorry, it was a long briefing. Please tell the men and women we appreciate everything that you are doing out there. We know this must be frustrating for you. We came off of 1 murder in 2022, and this is a tough start for all of us. So I think it's not where we want to be, but we just want to say thank you, and then we'll circle back with the council here for a work session. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I really do take it personally when it happens, but thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Mr. City Attorney, please present the next item on the agenda.
Yes, the next item on the agenda is ceremonial item, City Council Citation ID 11623 for outgoing Poet Laureate Maggie Benshaw.
Right. Maggie. Thank you, Maggie. I'm going to come up here and give you a citation. Hopefully you've got a poem for us.
I do not.
So we appreciate everything, and you're moving, right? Yeah? Soon, okay, cool. I'm just going to get up on this microphone here and say, on behalf of the residents of the City of Annapolis, we're pleased to confer upon you the City Council citation in recognition of your service as Poet Laureate for the City of Annapolis during 2021 and 2023. You did an outstanding job of engaging the public with numerous outreach initiatives, including Annapolis Youth Poetry Contest, Poetry in the Packer, and the South County Arts Lab, among many other popular events. You're a shining example of a Poet Laureate, and you sparked energy and imagination across all communities, cultures, and all age groups in the greater Annapolis area. You inspired people with your poem, Listen, for the anniversary of the Capital Gazette shooting, bringing tears to many eyes. The residents of the City of Annapolis are grateful for you, your energy and hard work to engage the public in a wonderful world of poetry and spoken word. We thank you for your service.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you.
There's a microphone there if you'd like to.
Yeah, I just have something short, but really I just wanted to thank the City of Annapolis and the Arts and Public Places Committee for giving me this opportunity. I think even when I interviewed, I was just not expecting it. I've had so much fun. I've been really grateful to be given this chance. I met awesome people and hopefully, sparked an interest, more of an interest in the world of poetry and literature, and hopefully made people realize it is accessible. And I'm really excited to be helping pick the next Poet Laureate, and, can't wait to support them along the way for as long as I'm here in Annapolis. So thank you again. I appreciate it. I had such a great time in this position, and I will hold this very near and dear to my heart. So thank you. Oh, yes.
Thank you for being a teacher as well.
Oh,
Thank you.
Thank you. Much appreciated.
Mr. City Attorney, please present the next item on the agenda.
Yes, sir. The next item on the agenda is petition reports and communications, beginning with update from the mayor.
So good evening. Now that the budget has passed unanimously, a first since I've been mayor, I want to thank and acknowledge everyone who played a role in this lengthy and complex process. At the top of the thank you list, our Finance Director, Jody Dickinson, and Budget Manager, Katie Connolly, and their finance team. They got started. Let's have a big round of applause for you guys. They got started late last year, asking everyone to submit their requests. I thank the department directors for their teams who submitted those requests and put their presentations together, justifying every expense. When the call comes in later this year to submit priorities for FY25, I hope we can do it all again in such a seamless and professional process. Thank you all. Give yourselves a round of applause. On a more somber note, over the weekend, many of us were able to celebrate Juneteenth and Father's Day, but it was also a solemn occasion for many of our community, laying to rest one of the latest victims of gun violence. On Sunday morning, there was a vigil for the victims of last week's mass shooting. Governor Moore, County Executive Pittman, and I met privately with the families before gathering at Lawyers Mall and walking to City Dock. I know people in our community across this country are frightened and frustrated and fed up. I am too. There is no community, no sacred space in America immune from the epidemic of gun violence, but we can't give up this fight. I thank those who are working this issue on the ground in our communities. I thank those groups who work for these issues every legislative session. I look to our Annapolis Police, who right now have unprecedented cross-jurisdictional support from not only Anne Arundel County Police, but also federal support from FBI, ATF, and other agencies. We are getting guns off the street. We have suspects in custody and pending charges on every homicide this year, as you heard from the police chief. There is also always more to do, and we are not giving up. We will keep working to bring peace to our community, we will work to get guns out of the hands of the wrong people. Next Wednesday, June 28th, we'll gather at the Guardians of the First Amendment Memorial on Compromise Street to mark the 5th anniversary of the mass shooting at the Capitol Gazette. There will be a wreath-laying ceremony at 9:30 a.m. to honour not only those 5 victims, Jared Fishman, John McNamara, Wendy Winters, Rob Hyacin, and Rebecca Smith, but also the most recent victims of gun violence, Nicholas Morales, Maria Morales, Christian Segovia, Amari Tiding, Raphael Hilton Johnson Jr., and Rico Johnson, killed. The first one of the year was in January 22nd. It is important to say their names and remember them as people who had loved ones and families, and the communities feel the pain of everybody's loss. While we were dealing with the aftermath of this tragic situation, the day-to-day work of government goes on and impacts the lives of others in other ways. And so I'd like to call to attention the draft of our Annapolis Ahead 2040 Comprehensive Plan presented to the Planning Commission last Thursday. This presentation kicks off a 90-day public reviewing comment period. The comprehensive plan was drafted over the past 3 years. It included more than 100 in-person and virtual community meetings. Before the Planning Commission finishes its own review, we'd like to take it out to the community again. There are 2 virtual presentations scheduled this Thursday, the 22nd, and next Thursday, the 29th, in addition to 4 in-person events scheduled in mid-July across the city. Please check out www.annapolisahead2040.com for information on all events, to read the draft plan, and to submit public comments on the plan. Coming up this weekend, many members of the City Council and some city staff will be attending the Maryland Municipal League Conference to learn from other jurisdictions and to share what Annapolis is doing. So I hope you guys all have fun at the beach. How many of you are going? Put your hands up. There we go. There's the commitment. Thank you for working on the weekends. We appreciate you guys. I know you work every single day. We have our City Independence celebration on Tuesday, July 4th. The parade begins at Amos Garrett Boulevard on West Street at 6:30 p.m. and continues up west to Main Street to City Dock. From there, we'll have a band playing and music and fireworks at around 9:15. Please be alert for road closures and maritime restrictions so that we can have a safe event. We've made the decision to close the city offices on Monday, July 3rd and Tuesday, July 4th. Thank you. And now let's get on with the meeting. Mr. City Attorney.
Yes, the next item on the agenda is report by committees.
Alderman O'Neill.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Transportation Committee will meet this Thursday, June 22nd, 4 p.m. here in Council Chambers.
Alderman Tierney.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The Finance Committee had a special meeting today, June 20th. We gave a favorable recommendation to the supplemental appropriations you'll see on the agenda tonight, and the fund transfers as well. The next Finance Committee meeting is scheduled for Wednesday, July 5th at 10:30 a.m. Thank you.
Thank you. Alderman Gay.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mayor. The Housing and Human Welfare Committee will be meeting again on July the 17th at 6:30 p.m. We'll be discussing O2123 landlord-tenant relations legislation, and also following up on the Housing, Human Welfare, and Community Equity Development Commission recommendations. And I'm also going to add public testimony in light of what took place tonight, and allow the public to come forward 3 to 5 minutes, as I do at our council meetings, and relay public testimony related to crime or any incidents in the city that they feel comfortable doing so. I think that also helps promote transparency, and we're not icing out communities here, so thank you.
Thank you. Shannon.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Economic Matters will not be meeting tomorrow.
Thank you. Anybody else? Alderman Finlayson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The Rules and City Government Committee will meet on Friday, July 7th, 1 o'clock here in council chambers. Thank you.
Anybody else? Thank you. Mr. City Attorney, please present the next item agenda.
The next item on the agenda is comments by the general public.
Okay. First person signed up to speak? Oh, there you are.
I knew it was me, so I figured I'd try to speed things up a little. Tara Stout, 1118 August Drive, Ward 6. Obviously, I came tonight just to emphasize the need to support the pilot for the Willows. As most of you know, it was approved on May 18th. We're still waiting for the final written approval by Planning Commission. Hopefully, we'll have that shortly. I believe their rules require it within 45 days. Not sure why it takes so long, but we're waiting. I did hear their commentary at the end of the last meeting, and it didn't sound like they had any sense of urgency, but I think Mr. Smith is trying to prod that along for us. Several times throughout the times I've come here, I've made the comment that quality of life begins with quality housing. And after sitting here listening to the chief tonight, I think I'd like to just emphasize that the impetus should be on all of you to do something to improve the housing in some of these communities that are experiencing high levels of crime. And one of those things would be to not let it take so long for a project like the Willows to get through the city process. We'd be a year ahead of schedule had this moved quicker, and some of the people who are dying to move into the Willows might be living in a safer community. So I'm glad we're finally here, and I look forward to getting through the process. But hopefully the next time someone comes with a quality development, the city will react quicker, understanding what kind of a need there is in this community for quality housing. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else like to come forward and speak? Okay, I declare comments by the general public closed. Mr. City Attorney, please present the next item agenda.
Yes, sir. The next item on the agenda is business and miscellaneous, beginning with supplemental appropriations. First one is SA 3123, General, Mayor's Office contributions from Whiting Turner, $3,000. Special projects, Mayor's Office, $3,000.
Can I get a motion for SA 31-23?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Alderman Savage?
Just when the agenda was posted, there was no information on this. So can someone provide a briefing?
I think the Whiting Turner gave,
Never mind.
Dickinson.
This one was on there. I'm sorry. I'm thinking of the next ones.
Okay. Thank you. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Thank you. Mr. City Attorney, please present the next item on the agenda.
The next item on the agenda is fund transfers, beginning with fund transfer FT 523, General Police.
Could I get a motion for FT 523?
So second.
Thank you. Alderman Savage?
Sorry, are these, I saw these did go to the Finance Committee. Do you have any kind of briefing on all of these that you could share? As far as, like, are they just
Yes, we had a
routine
very-
balancing end of the year
yeah.
things? Okay.
Thank you. We had a very thorough briefing on each of them, and yes, they are explained as far as balancing the well, not balancing, it's to reconcile the fourth quarter budget by moving money which was available to support where it was funded so that the department would balance out. And I'm sure the finance director could explain that better, but that's basically what it was.
Okay, thank you. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Thank you. Mr. City Attorney, please present the next item agenda.
The next item is FT 623, General Fire.
Is there a motion to approve FT 6-23?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Thank you. Mr. City Attorney, please present the next on the agenda.
The next item is FT 723, General Fund, Self-Insurance, Transportation, various boards and commissions.
Is there a motion to approve FT 7-23?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Thank you. Mr. City Attorney, please present the next on the agenda.
The next item is legislative actions on first reader, beginning with Resolution R 3723, March on Washington 60th Anniversary Commemoration Waiver.
Could I get a motion on R 37-23?
So moved. Second.
Thank you. Alderman Savage.
Just a request for the staff report. Could the staff report go into a little bit of as far as the origin of the restrictions in the code as far as what the original rationale was, because I think there were no events, no large events 2 weeks in a row, right, in city code. We don't have to get into it now, but I'm just giving you a heads up. I'd like some details on that at some point.
Alderman Tierney, you just want to give
Yeah,
a quick summary?
On this specific waiver, it's, to have this event, it is, we would need a waiver from the current city code on special events, which says that, one of them is that you can't have back-to-back events, as you said. So what this does is waive, and it is, it's not recurring, it's a one-time event.
Okay, all those in favour say aye. Aye. Opposed? Mr. City Attorney, please present the next on the agenda.
Yes, sir. The next item on the agenda is legislative action on second reader. Budget resolutions, beginning with R 5022, Rocky Gorge Development Emergency Action.
Do I have a motion on R 50-22?
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to withdraw R 5022.
Could I get a second on that?
Second.
Okay, all those in favour say aye. Aye. Opposed? Thank you. Mr. City Attorney, please present the next on the agenda.
Yes, sir. The next item on the agenda is R 3423, Payments in lieu of Taxes Agreement with Forest Drive LIHTC LLC.
Left. Did she?
Is there a motion to adopt R-34-23 on second reader? So moved.
I can't believe Tara left. That's why she was here. I'm like celebrating. I'm losing it.
We got a second. Do we get that? Okay, Madam City Clerk, please call the roll.
Mayor Buckley.
Aye.
Alderman Finlayson. Alderman Finlayson.
Alderwoman Finley.
Alderman Finlayson.
Aye.
Thank you. Alderman Stoudemire.
Did you have a question on?
No.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Aye. Alderman Gay. Alderman Savage.
Aye.
Alderwoman Tierney.
Aye.
Alderwoman O'Neill.
Aye.
Alderman Pendle Charles.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. City Attorney, please present the next on the agenda.
The agenda is complete, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, is there anything else for good order?
Yeah.
Alderman O'Neill?
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I would just like to say, even though he's not here, but maybe he's listening, that before we have our next meeting, Director David Gerald will no longer be with us because he's leaving the city. And I wanted to say thank you. He has always been responsive to me with clear definitions and understanding of some of my off-the-wall questions, and has always been very prompt in responding when I had emergency needs in the public works. And he's going to be missed dearly.
Thank you. Alderman Pendle Charles?
Ditto.
And I want to thank the council for recognising the years that David gave us by naming the new Public Works building after him. I think his kids will be really proud of that, and thank you for recognising all the infrastructure that he led us through well before I got here. So I truly appreciate you guys doing that. Thank you so much. Okay. Could I get a motion to adjourn?
Second.
All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Meeting adjourned. Thank you for being here.
You're not old enough for